Raylene has our story for us. And we have a couple young people here, so they can take up their offering.
I love it when she plays those songs. I have a hard time not singing. The story today is one that I got from Eric B. Hare. So it's a story that happened quite a long time ago. You know, there used to be a lot of islands. There still are islands out in the ocean, but in those days, none of those people knew about Jesus. And they did sometimes really terrible things. In fact, some of them were cannibals. You know, cannibals are? When people come to their island that they didn't like, sometimes they ate them for supper. They don't do that anymore on any of the islands, I don't think. But when this happened, they did. But there was a missionary that went down and started a mission school on one of the islands where there were Christians. But he saw that there were a lot of islands around there that didn't know anything about God at all. And so after a few years of teaching at some of those schools, he had some students, a lot of boys that were going to the mission school, and they learned to sing, and they learned about God, and they wanted to tell all the people on the other islands about it. And so the missionary said, okay, boys, we're going to take our boat, and we're going to go to this other island and see if the chief there will let us come there to teach. So that's what they did. They got on a boat and they went to another island. Well, the people on the island saw the boat coming and they were not happy about it. And so they got in their boat and they came out there to meet the missionary in his boat, but they were not welcoming. And they came right up close to that boat, and they had all kinds of swords kind of things, and bow and arrows, and things like that they used to get people to leave their island. And they got as close as they could to the missionary's boat, and the missionary said, hello, hello, and he tried to be friendly, and he said, we have some good news for you. Of course, he could talk in their language. But people from the island and the chief of the island said, no, don't you come here. And they started screaming, no, 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 at the missionary and the boys. Well, the boys felt a little bit afraid, I'm sure. But the missionary said, oh, I know what let's do. you start singing. Do you know the song that he told them to sing? We sang it in Sabbath school today, and it's, "Anywhere with Jesus I can safely go." And the boys knew that song, and they started singing that song at the top of their lungs because that made them feel less afraid, because it reminded them that who was there with them. Yes, and they didn't need to be afraid because they weren't there alone. There were a lot of angels with them, and Jesus was with them, and so they sang that song. Well, the people from the island boat never heard singing like that before. And so they kept on yelling, "No, no, go away," and banging. But then the more the boys sang, they sang another time, and they sang it another time. And pretty soon they stopped yelling, "No." And the chief started listening. And then they turned around in their boat and they went back to their island. Well, the boys and the missionaries said, "Okay, we'll go home and we'll pray and we'll come back again tomorrow." So that's what they did. They came back the next day, and guess what happened? The chief and the people from the island, they came on their boat to meet them. But this time they didn't say, "No, no, go away." The chief stood up and said he had something to tell them. And so they didn't know what he was going to say, but they listened. And he said, "Sing again for us. And we want you to come and teach us how to sing those songs." That was just what the missionary wanted to hear. And so they did. And they started a school on that island. And pretty soon that became a Christian island. And almost all the people on the island learned to love Jesus, and they learned to keep the Sabbath. All because of a song. You know, sometimes we think, "Oh, I can't do anything," but we can, can't we? And people, we can ask Jesus to help us to know just what to do at the right time. That was just the right thing for them to do, was to sing. That was the thing that helped. And Jesus will tell us what to do too. Okay? Thank you.
Here's a message from the pastor. Happy Sabbath, everyone. All throughout the North American Division today, we are celebrating Health Sabbath. And it is really very special to be able to do so and to be blessed at this time by a powerful health message presented on video by Pastor Roy Ice, the speaker director to the Faith for Today television ministry. Especially prepared for this occasion. May the Lord bless us all as we receive it in our hearts and share it with everyone we meet. Thank you. Let's go sit down.
North American Division's Health Sabbath. I know when the preacher starts talking about health, it gets quieter in here than the church is on Monday. But hang on, I promise you, we're going to have fun, and we will be inspired by God's Word and His blessing that He has for us today. God has given this group of people. Happy Sabbath, my friends. Today we celebrate the North American Division's Health Sabbath.
I know when the preacher starts talking about health, it gets quieter in here than the church is on Monday. But hang on, I promise you, we're going to have fun and we will be inspired by God's word and his blessing that he has for us today. God has given this group of people a very special gift, and that gift is called health everlasting. I'm here with you today to make sure that you don't miss out on the benefits that this gift brings specifically to you and to your church community. So who is this guy on the screen talking with you today? Well, I'm Roy Ice, the speaker and director of Faith for Today Media Ministries, the television broadcast ministry that has been given the mission by God and the North American division of Seventh-Adventist to be your ambassadors for your church and to reach out to your neighbors who are not interested in our views of prophecy or theology. For more than 73 years, Faith for Today has been broadcasting television programming to help people know that there is a very special group of people who love them and love God, a community of faith who can help them to not only live their best life possible, but to live a decade longer. That's right, you have the gift to share of a decade for all of your friends and neighbors. Now, at Faith for Today, we do all of this through the lens of life coaching. We interview celebrities, professional athletes, authors, experts, and everyday people with extraordinary experiences on one of our television programs called Lifestyle. You can access our broadcast, our podcast, our blog post resources by going to our website, lifestyle.org, and sharing the relevant content with your neighbors, your family, your friends. In a few moments, I'll share some stories from some of the celebrities that we've been working with recently. But first, I think we should start by diving into God's Word and to let that be the guide for our message together. What do you think? Our scripture reading today comes from Exodus chapter 15, verses 22 through 26, and I'll be reading here from the New King James Version. It reads, "So Moses brought Israel from the Red Sea. Then they went out into the wilderness of Shur, and they went 3 days in the wilderness and found no water. Now when they came to Marah, they could not drink the waters of Marah, for they were bitter. Therefore the name of it was called Marah. And the people complained against Moses, saying, 'What shall we drink?' So he cried out to the Lord, and the Lord showed him a tree. When he cast it into the waters were made sweet. There he made a statute and an ordinance for them, and there he tested them and said, 'If you diligently heed the voice of the Lord your God, and do what is right in his sight, give ear to his commandments and keep all his statutes, I will put none of the diseases on you which I have brought on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord who heals you.'" Ah, what a great promise. I have a question for you today. Have you ever experienced the worst of times right on the heels of the best day of your life? Isn't that how it typically happens? You get some really great news, and then bad news seems to come quickly right after. It seems to be life's formula. That truly seems to be the formula for the children of Israel here, right after they have been freed from their slavery in Egypt. They were cynical. Life seems to try to make all of us cynical. The good is announced, but bad takes the stage. I'll never forget one of the first experiences that threatened to make me a cynic. I was only 9 years old, and we got the most exciting letter in the mailbox. "You have won," it said in big fat letters. Inside the envelope, our blessings were spelled out in even more dazzling details. "You are guaranteed to be the winner of one of the following prizes. Number 1, a boat. Number 2, a brand new Cadillac. And number 3, a big screen TV." Now, my 9-year-old face couldn't stop smiling. Surely God was blessing my family for our faithful devotions, or for going to church every Sabbath, or for being faithful with our tithes and offerings. He obviously was blessing us for doing all 3. This would go down in my childhood memories as one of the happiest days of my life. We had never won anything in my lifetime. We were broke. We barely had what we needed, but never had much more. Had life just taken a turn for the better for my family? We loaded up our old station wagon and we drove 45 minutes up the road to the address listed to pick up our boat or Cadillac or big screen TV. Upon arriving, I immediately scanned the parking lot to see if our boat or Cadillac were still there, but I couldn't see either of them. Perhaps we had won the big screen TV. How were we ever going to get that TV into our car? Those things back then were more massive than a china cabinet. Maybe Dad would have to strap it onto the roof of the car. Our whole family walked into the bustling office and were immediately ushered into a side room. When we waved our winning letter at the receptionist, she said, "Yep, that's where you need to go." The funny thing is that I remember the man who spoke in that room with my parents for 30 minutes, and he never once talked about our boat or our Cadillac or big screen TV. He just kept going on and on about what a great deal it would be for my parents to buy a membership to their campground franchise. When my parents said no for about the 127th time, the man finally gave up with a huff and began to leave the room. Well, my folks held up the letter and held it out to him and said, "Well, what about our prize? It says right here that we won one of these 3 prizes." "That's true," he said gruffly. "Let me go get it for you." So we waited, and we waited several minutes for him to come back, but he never did. So we left the little room to go see if he had forgotten about us. As we reemerged into the large office filled with dozens of desks, I spotted the man at the other end of the office walking toward us. In his hands, he held a package wrapped in plastic. Could it be the paperwork and the keys to our new Cadillac? It definitely didn't seem to have anything to do with the TV, and as far as I could figure, I couldn't tell what it was. But then I saw it. 4 bold black letters ran across the thick piece of paper pressed up against the clear plastic packaging. A color photo took up most of the space underneath. The letter spelled BOAT. According to the word at the top, we had won a boat. But according to the picture and the contents inside the clear plastic bag, we had just won a 1-person rubber raft. When we protested and exclaimed, "This isn't a boat," the man smiled and said, "Sure it is. It says so right here. It's a boat." It was a long, quiet ride back home that day. I'll never forget holding that light package in my lap and mumbling, "This was not what they promised. This is not a boat." Have you ever experienced a time when all of your hopes and dreams were coming true, but then everything seemed to dry up like they always have in the past? This is the emotional experience of the children of Israel in Exodus chapter 15. They just couldn't seem to catch a break. The scorching sun had beat down on the vast desert, casting its relentless heat upon the exhausted Israelites who journeyed through the wilderness. The weary wanderers of Israel trod through the arid sands, their spirits as parched as their cracked lips. Just 3 days ago, they had escaped the clutches of Pharaoh and his oppressive rule. They had crossed the Red Sea and had witnessed a deliverance that only God could have brought. But now they faced a new trial, the harsh conditions of the desert. As the days stretched on, their water supply began to dwindle, leaving dry throats and aching bodies in its wake. Each step seemed heavier than the last, and as the days continued, their water supply dwindled, leaving behind a desperate thirst that gnawed at their very souls. The journey at last had led them to Marah, an oasis that promised the relief they were longing for. Their spirits lifted at the sight of water, but then their hopes were soon dashed as they realized the water was bitter, undrinkable, and foul. Murmurs of discontent spread through the camp, and desperation settled upon them like a heavy cloud. Perhaps today we can relate to the experience of these exhausted and frustrated children of God more than we wish that we could. Possibly you are frustrated because we've just come out of a couple of years of the pandemic lockdown and you had high hopes for things to get better, your finances to improve, your relationships to flourish, your job to get back to normal, your health to get stronger. But instead of refreshing and improvement, you are experiencing a bitter reality. What do you do when all your sweet hopes are dashed by the bitter waters of reality? Where does your mind go first? Frustration, resentment, hopelessness, or despair? Do you get very quiet, or do you have outbursts of anger? Unfortunately for Moses, the children of Israel verbally let him have it. So Moses knelt on the sandy ground, his heart burdened with the cries of his people. He lifted his eyes to the heavens and he sent a fervent prayer to the God who had guided them thus far. The Israelites gathered around him, their faces etched with frustration and exhaustion. They mirrored Moses' anguish with their downcast faces and whispered fears. "Oh Lord," Moses' voice rang out, raw with emotion. "You who have delivered us from Egypt's chains, do not let us perish in this wilderness. We are thirsty. Lord, our throats are parched and our spirits faint. Pour out your mercy upon us, we implore you." As the last echoes of Moses' prayer faded away, a miracle unfolded before their very eyes. A soft whisper of wind swept through the desert, and the waters of Marah began to stir. God spoke to Moses by showing him something that didn't seem to fit the problem. The problem was the water, but God showed Moses a tree. Has that ever happened to you? You have a problem and you ask God for a solution, but He shows you a tree. He shows you a solution that doesn't seem to fit the problem. There are many people in our communities who are thirsting for an answer to their heart's longings, and when God shows them the solution, it is not going to make sense to them. Do you want to know why? Well, it's because God is going to show them you. You are the representative of God and His presence in this world that is so dry and harsh and bitter. Now, I have a really fascinating job. I get to interview celebrities and notable people to help the world know that the Adventist Church cares about them and that we want everyone to live their healthiest lives. Well, one day in the TV studios, I had just finished interviewing one of the world's top voiceover actors. I would share his name, but I don't have his permission to share this private conversation. But nevertheless, I can share this. While we were shaking hands before he left, I thanked him for all of the laughs that he had brought to me, especially during my first 2 years of work right out of college. I told him of my 14-hour workdays, 7 days a week. I shared how when I arrived home late at night that I would be deeply stressed by listening to all the problems of the people that I had just heard during my pastoral visitations. The one thing that really helped to snap me out of the weight of all of this was to switch on the TV when I got home late at night and to watch the half-hour cartoon show that he helped to bring to life with his hilarious voices. I couldn't help but laugh all of my stress away. After that, I could have my evening devotions with a smile on my face and then drift off to a solid, peaceful night's sleep. A huge smile curved his face as he exclaimed, "Wow, thanks for sharing that. It feels really good to have made that difference for you." And he said, when did you graduate from college? I told him, 1993. 1993? How old are you? He asked me, obviously confused. I'm over 50, I said. What? I thought you were 35. Yeah, I reassured him. That's because I'm a member of the Blue Zone. I'm going to live 10 to 14 years longer than you. The Blue what? He was really intrigued. But of course, right then, our next celebrity guest had entered the studio, and it was time for us to begin filming the next episode of Lifestyle. So I said to him, it's called the Blue Zones, and the people of these communities outlive their neighbors. There are 8 common practices that can bring longevity into your life as well. And look, I've got nothing to push here, but if you'd like to hear more, here's my personal cell phone number. Give me a call and I'll tell you all about it. What a natural way that God opened up for me to talk with this man about our community of faith. You know, people truly are curious about our God-given blessing of longevity. I'm not sure if all of you who are present have heard of the Blue Zones before, but I guarantee you're going to love what you're about to hear. In 2004, New York Times bestseller Dan Buettner teamed up with National Geographic and the world's best longevity researchers to identify pockets around the world where people live measurably longer, healthier, and happier lives. They called them Blue Zones. Now, I was fortunate that in 2016, when I still worked at Loma Linda, I was asked to interview Dr. Buettner and Dr. Michael Poulain, 2 of the 3 founders of the Blue Zone areas. In these Blue Zone areas, they found that people reach age 100 at rates 10 times greater than the average person in the United States. Do you want to know why they call them the Blue Zones? Well, I asked them, and they said that while they were charting all this longevity data on the large maps, they began to circle these zones with a marker that was within the reach. That marker just so happened to be a blue one. Had it been a red or a green marker, voila, the name would have been a different color. And now you know the rest of the story. Perhaps you already know all about the Blue Zones, and maybe you've watched the new documentary on Netflix and you've seen how the Seventh-day Adventist Church is the only Blue Zone out of the 5 that's not geographically specific. The other 4 Blue Zones are in Okinawa, Japan, Icaria, Greece, Sardinia, Italy, and Nicoya, Costa Rica. Some people have mistakenly said that Loma Linda, California is our Blue Zone, but that's not accurate. Loma Linda is merely the area of highest concentration of Seventh-day Adventists. The Adventist Blue Zone is actually the Seventh-day Adventist Church of North America. Everywhere that there is an Adventist in the United States and Canada, they are part of our Blue Zone. And each of our churches are Blue Zone centers because that is where we all congregate. God has gifted us with an extra decade of health. And I want to explain to you why you have received this gift and how you can share it. But once again, it's probably best if we let our story in Exodus chapter 15 continue to guide us here. God had a blessing of health for the children of Israel, one that would change their health status as well. So Moses grabs an axe and begins chopping down a tree. The Israelites give sideways glances to one another. Surely their leader has gone mad. Perhaps he's succumbed to heat stroke. Maybe it was all the stress. He continues to hit the tree. The trunk groans as the last fibers give way, and the tree crashes into the water, sending a mist high into the scorching air. Moses, trembling with anticipation, drops to his knees once again and dips his hands into the waters, bringing it to his lips. The taste, oh, the taste! It was as if the very essence of grace was trickling down his throat, soothing the weariness of his journey and filling his heart with wonder. He couldn't help but smile. It was as if the bitterness that had plagued their journey had been transformed into a reminder of God's sweet faithfulness and provision. A most wondrous transformation had occurred. The once bitter water had turned sweet and pure. The Israelites watched in awe as the water sparkled like a precious gem, inviting them to partake of its newfound sweetness. The transformation was as miraculous as it was beautiful, an echo of the Creator's touch that turns the bitter to sweet. Word spread rapidly through the camp, and soon the entire community rushed to the shores of Marah. Laughter and joy replaced the earlier discontent as men, women, and children quenched their thirst from the miraculously healed waters. Laughter bubbled forth, and songs of praise flowed from their lips. that had only recently murmured discontent. They all cupped their hands to drink from this miracle, their faces radiant with gratitude. They marveled at the undeniable power of their God, who had turned their hardship into a testimony of his love. Moses stood before them, his eyes shining with thankfulness. God moved upon Moses again, and God spoke this promise as recorded in Exodus chapter 15, verse 26. If you diligently heed the voice of the Lord your God and do what is right in his sight, give ear to his commandments and keep all his statutes, I will put none of the diseases on you which I have brought on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord who heals you. Did you catch that? God has a promise for his people. He wants to bless you with his protection from diseases and to be the God who heals you. Longevity researchers around the world are trying to figure out how it is that you are living a decade longer than your neighbors. And the Bible tells us right here the reason why. You are diligently heeding God's voice and doing what is right in his sight. Many people may question why you do or don't do certain things, especially when it comes to your health, but it's all for this blessing. And I want to talk to you now about the blessing of God on the Seventh-day Adventist Blue Zone. According to the longevity researchers, Adventists tend to follow 8 common practices which have been scientifically found to help you completely defy our national statistics. I'll put the 8 practices right here on the screen. The first one is move naturally. Second, purpose. Third one, downshift. The fourth is 80% rule. The fifth is plant slant. Sixth, right tribe. 7, loved ones first. And 8th, belong. Now, I'm going to go into detail about these in a moment. Here's how they bring you health everlasting. The first one, move naturally. You might be wondering what that means. The Adventists understand the importance of staying active. We integrate movement into our daily lives. We walk, we garden, we find joy in physical tasks. This simple practice adds a remarkable 3 to 4 years to your lives. The second, purpose. This is a strong sense of purpose which drives the Adventist community. Our faith fuels our desire to contribute and make a difference in the world. Did you know that having a purpose has been linked to 2 to 3 additional years of life? It's like having a bonus time to fulfill your dreams. The third is downshift. And downshift means something like this. You probably know this. Stress is a silent killer, but it shouldn't be for us. We're called to practice relaxation by embracing prayer, and we engage in meaningful conversation, which adds a peaceful 2 to 3 years to our journey. I'm going to pause this Blue Zone practice for a moment because this is the one that threatens our Blue Zone status the most at this time. All of the Blue Zones are teetering on the edge of losing their status for their own reasons. Did you know the Okinawa, Japan Blue Zone is in danger today because of furniture? That's right, furniture. Young people are purchasing furniture and sitting on it. The older generation sat on the floor and would get up and down as many as 100 times a day. And that really helps to build up their core strength. But furniture is making the younger generation less fit. And because of that, they may lose their Blue Zone status within this generation. For the Adventist Blue Zone, we have a different enemy: never-ending stress. The reality is that every single one of us needs to figure out how to manage our ongoing stress. In ancient times, when our ancestors like Abraham, Moses, and David lived more nomadically, stress to them was not ongoing. It was always in short bursts of stress. A lion or a tiger was close by and they had to run away. In our modern times, you undoubtedly face multiple demands each day, such as taking on a huge workload, paying bills with limited funds, taking care of your family. Your body treats these so-called minor hassles as threats. And as a result, you may feel as if you're constantly under attack. Researchers from the Mayo Clinic have revealed what happens in this ongoing stressful condition. They say that your hypothalamus, a tiny region at your brain's base, sets off an alarm system in your body. Through a combination of nerve and hormonal signals, this system prompts your adrenal glands, located atop your kidneys, to release a surge of hormones, including adrenaline and cortisol. Adrenaline increases your heart rate, elevates your blood pressure, and boosts energy supplies. Cortisol, the primary stress hormone, increases sugars in the bloodstream. It enhances your brain's use of glucose and increases the availability of substances that repair tissues. Now, this sounds like a good thing, doesn't it? Well, it's not, and here's why. Cortisol also curbs functions that would be non-essential or detrimental in a fight or flight situation. It alters your immune system, and it suppresses your digestive system, the reproductive system, and the growth processes. This complex natural alarm system also communicates with the brain regions that control mood, motivation, and fear. So the long-term activation of the stress response system and the overexposure to cortisol and other stress hormones that follows can disrupt almost all of your body's processes. This puts you at an increased risk of many health problems, including the following: anxiety, depression, digestive problems, headaches, heart disease, sleeping problems, weight gain, memory and concentration impairment. That's why it's so important to learn healthy ways to cope with your life's stressors. So take a moment and seriously make a plan for what you are going to do right now. What are you going to start implementing? How can you implement downshifting into your daily routine? Our system in the Adventist Church, we pray. You serve a God who cares just as much or even more than you do about all the things that are causing you stress. Jesus says in Matthew 11, verses 29 to 30, "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." It's true. You don't have to carry around your stress. Give it all to God in prayer and find rest for your soul. Now, the fourth practice of the Adventist Blue Zone is called the 80% rule. The Adventists follow an age-old adage of eating mindfully and stopping at 80% full. And this practice not only nourishes our bodies, but also adds a delectable 2 to 3 years to our lifespan. The fifth area is plant slant. We're known for this. Our diet is predominantly plant-based, rich in nutrients and antioxidants. This choice grants us an impressive 4 to 5 years of added vitality. What you put on your plate can truly determine the years on your calendars. The sixth is belong. Community, faith, and connections are paramount for us. Did you know that the act of going to a religious service 4 times a month can add between 7 to 14 years to a person's life? That's right, inviting your friends and neighbors to church is one of the best things you can do for their longevity. Talk about a great sales pitch. You want to enjoy seeing your great-grandkids? Come with me to church. The seventh practice is loved ones first. Now, putting family and relationships first is non-negotiable for the Adventist. This practice has blessed us with an astonishing 4 to 6 more years of cherished time with our loved ones. And the last one, the eighth practice, is called right tribe. Surrounding yourself with positive, like-minded individuals is a cornerstone of Adventist living. This circle of influence gifts us an awe-inspiring 3 to 5 years of shared growth and mutual empowerment. Now, these are things that many of you do naturally without even thinking about it because it has become a way of life for you. But I have some exciting good news for each and every one of you today. God wants to share this blessing of health everlasting with those who live around us as well. I was blessed with the opportunity a few months ago to interview the television actor William Shatner on our TV show Lifestyle. Now, many people recognize him from his early work as Star Trek's Captain of the Enterprise, James T. Kirk. He had just turned 92 years old the week before I interviewed him, and just over a year before, he had broken the age record by being the oldest man to ever travel into space. He told me that the toughest thing about going on that rocket ride was the stairs. That's right, they made him walk up 11 flights of stairs to get up to the crew capsule. Some of you are saying, 11 flights of stairs, that's nothing, I can do 12. And I applaud you because you are a true representation of our Blue Zone. But let me share with you something that will excite you even more. The blessing of health everlasting that God has given to us for following his prescribed paths is something that can bless others as well with their longevity. Just like the blessing that God gave to Abraham, our blessing is that we would be a blessing to the nations around us. And here's how. Several towns have plugged our practices into their communities and have had shocking results. In Albert Lee, Minnesota, it worked. After just 1 year, participants added an estimated 2.9 years to their average lifespan, while healthcare claims for city workers dropped 49%. Walter Willett from Harvard called the results stunning. In Beach Cities, California, childhood obesity declined by 50%, smoking declined by 17%, and stress went down by 8%. Fort Worth, Texas transformed itself from one of the unhealthiest cities in the nation. It used to rank way down at the bottom as 185th out of 190, but this city's well-being rocketed up to 58th in a very short amount of time. God has not only gifted us with more time, he has gifted us with the gift of giving others more time as well. What a gift we have to share. May we all share this gift of health everlasting with everyone we meet until Jesus comes and takes us home to be with him forever and ever. Happy Sabbath, my friends. Today we celebrate the North American Division's Health Sabbath. I know when the preacher starts talking about health, it gets quieter in here than the church is on Monday.